I've been tracking capital flows for more than 70 years. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Money doesn't lie. It doesn't posture. It doesn't negotiate. It simply goes where it's treated best. And right now, we're witnessing one of the largest capital shifts in North American automotive history. Toyota, a company that has poured billions into American manufacturing, has just announced a $40 billion reallocation to Canada. $40 billion. That's not a casual figure. That's not a quarterly adjustment or a strategic hedge. That's a vote of no confidence in the current business climate. Whether you support this administration or oppose it, whether you favor tariffs or free trade, this move should deeply concern you. Because this isn't just about one company or one industry. This is the early stage of what happens when policy becomes unpredictable, when governance turns transactional, and when the foundation of investment certainty begins to crack. Let me be clear from the start. This isn't political for me. I have no partisan agenda. I've worked with Republican administrations and Democratic ones. I've seen good policy and bad policy from both sides. But what's happening right now goes beyond party lines. This is about economic fundamentals. It's about whether the United States remains the most attractive destination for global capital, or whether we're entering an era where businesses, even those committed here for decades, begin looking north, south, anywhere but here. The announcement came quietly, as these things often do. No grand press conference, no dramatic unveiling. Just a measured statement from Toyota's executive board, a massive expansion of Canadian operations, and a corresponding reduction in planned U.S. investment. The timeline stretches through 2030, but the signal is immediate. President Trump, reportedly, is furious, publicly and privately, because this wasn't supposed to happen. The entire premise of his economic strategy, the tariffs, the threats, the renegotiations, was built on the idea that access to the American market was so valuable that companies would simply absorb the costs, accept the uncertainty, and keep investing here no matter what. That calculation, it appears, was wrong. So, let's talk about what's actually happening. Not the political spin, not the talking points, but the hard economics of why a company that employs tens of thousands of Americans and has built entire supply chains around U.S. manufacturing would pivot $40 billion toward Canada. Because once you understand the mechanics, you'll see why this moment matters far beyond the automotive sector. This decision didn't happen overnight. Companies like Toyota don't move $40 billion on impulse. They plan, they model, they stress test, and somewhere over the past 18 months, a consensus formed in boardrooms. The risk-reward calculation in the United States has fundamentally shifted. It started with tariffs, not just automotive tariffs, though those matter enormously, but the broader philosophy of using trade policy as a negotiating weapon. When the administration imposed a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum, the stated goal was to protect American manufacturers. On the surface, that sounds reasonable. Protect domestic industry, create jobs, make America competitive again. But here's what actually happened. Those tariffs didn't just affect foreign steel. They affected every American company that uses steel as an input. Automakers like Toyota, Ford, and GM. Their input costs surged, not because they were buying inferior products, but because domestic supply couldn't meet demand at competitive prices. Suddenly, companies were paying 25% more for the same material and expected either to absorb the cost, cutting into margins, or pass it on to consumers, making their products less competitive globally. And it got worse. The tariffs weren't stable. They changed. They were threatened, withdrawn, reimposed, renegotiated. One month, you were operating under one set of rules. The next month, everything was different. For manufacturers planning investments 5-10 years out, that kind of volatility is poison. It's not that businesses can't adapt to higher costs. They do it all the time. What they can't adapt to is not knowing what the costs will be next quarter, next year. That uncertainty freezes investment. It makes long-term planning nearly impossible. Now contrast that with Canada. No country is perfect. But from a business standpoint, Canada offers something the US currently doesn't: predictability. Regardless of which party is in power, Canada has maintained relatively consistent trade policy. It's part of USMCA, the agreement that replaced NAFTA and that Trump himself negotiated. There's a legal framework, there's stability, and critically, there's an incentive structure that actively courts manufacturing investment. Canada has been offering tax credits, infrastructure support, workforce training programs. They've built entire industrial parks specifically designed for automotive manufacturing without the political theatrics that make boardrooms nervous. And the details matter. Toyota's $40 billion commitment to Canada isn't just about building more factories, though that's part of it. It's about building an entire ecosystem. Battery production facilities for electric vehicles, research and development centers for autonomous driving, supply chain partnerships with Canadian parts manufacturers. This is generational investment, the kind you make when you believe a country will honor its agreements, maintain its policies, and treat you as a partner rather than a pawn. What truly concerns me is this: it isn't just Toyota. Honda has announced expanded Canadian operations. Stellantis, the company behind Chrysler, Jeep, and Ram, is investing billions in Ontario. Even Ford, an American icon, has been quietly shifting production northward. This is a pattern, and patterns in capital allocation tell you where the smart money believes the future is headed. The administration's response has been predictable: anger, threats of additional tariffs, rhetoric about companies being disloyal, choosing profits over patriotism. And look, I understand. When American jobs move abroad, it hurts. It feels like betrayal. But the reality is this: Toyota doesn't owe America loyalty. It owes its shareholders returns. That's how capitalism works. Capital flows toward stability, clarity, and opportunity. What troubles me isn't that Toyota made this decision. It's that Washington's response is more of the same. More threats, more tariffs, more unpredictability. There's a dangerous misunderstanding here. The belief that access to the American market is so valuable that companies will tolerate any cost to maintain it. Toyota's $40 billion investment in Canada isn't a warning shot. It's the sound of a door closing. Once factories are built, workers trained, and supply chains established, companies don't simply reverse course when trade policy shifts. Those decisions lock in decades of economic reality. Toyota currently employs about 136,000 people in the US. Not all of those jobs are disappearing, but much of the future growth is now going to Canada. We're talking about tens of thousands of high-paying manufacturing jobs, engineers, technicians, skilled tradespeople. These jobs anchor communities. Some argue this is simply the free market. That's partly true. But this isn't Canada winning through superiority. This is the United States losing through self-inflicted policy damage. That's not competition. That's sabotage. The tariff strategy was built on a flawed assumption that making imports more expensive would force companies to bring manufacturing back home. But cost isn't the only factor. Businesses also consider regulatory stability, political predictability, and market access. When higher costs are paired with uncertainty, the math changes. Investment flees. If you're a global CEO watching this, you're thinking, if Toyota is moving $40 billion to Canada, what does that mean for us? The answer is you hedge, you diversify. You keep enough presence in the US to serve the market, but you no longer anchor your global strategy here. And we're not just competing with Canada. We're competing with the entire world. China is investing hundreds of billions. Europe maintains stable frameworks. The world no longer needs the United States the way it once did. We are still powerful, still important, but no longer indispensable. So what should US policy be? The answer is simple. Create an environment where businesses want to invest. That means stable taxes, predictable regulations, functional infrastructure, a skilled workforce, honored agreements, treating trade partners as partners, not enemies. In investing, I look for management integrity. Do they keep their word? The same standard applies to countries. Can businesses trust US trade agreements? Right now, the answer is uncertain, and uncertainty is expensive. The auto industry is especially vulnerable because of its integrated supply chains. A car assembled in Michigan may have an engine from Mexico, a transmission from Canada. That integration was the entire point of USMCA, but now that system is fragmenting. History gives us a warning. In the 1970s and 80s, American automakers responded to Japanese competition with protectionism. It worked briefly, but it didn't solve the real problem: declining quality. The lesson is clear. You can't protect your way to competitiveness. You have to earn it. Toyota's $40 billion move may look like just another business story. To me, it's a warning. If we don't restore confidence, we will wake up one day and realize the world has moved on without us.